Welcome to the Microsoft Australian OEM team webinar on Windows Server and updates that have been occurring recently, as well as information on what's new and what's coming in the pipeline. So first up, we'll take a look at some of the things that are new and have changed in the Windows marketplace, just so you've got an idea of the impact that things such as Windows Server Essentials updates and Windows 10 updates will have in your customer environments. Then we'll spend a bit of time talking about some of the key takeaways from Microsoft's Global Partner Conference, or the Worldwide Partner Conference 2015, which I attended last month in Orlando in very hot and humid Florida. And this will give you a few ideas around the direction that Microsoft's taking and the types of things that are probably going to be important for your business. Maybe not necessarily now for everyone, but definitely things that you need to keep an eye on. Then we'll talk about some of the upcoming events, and then we'll wrap up with some additional resources that you should be keeping an eye on. So first up, I guess we can't ignore Windows 10. It's gone out, it's being pushed out on the web. We've all got lots of people who've been receiving updates. We've all been trying to jump ahead of the curve where we can to try to get it installed onto new machines. But I just thought I'd take this time to go through a few of the top line things. This is not a Windows 10 focused session. We could spend an entire session going through Windows 10, but this is a Windows Server focused event. So I just want to focus on the impact that this will have in Windows Server environments and some of the things you need to be aware of. So I guess the first one here that I've got listed is that, what's the impact on domain joined machines? So those of you who are working with customers with domain joined machines will already know this, but these machines won't automatically get pushed out the Windows 10 update. They won't see this sitting there in their updates if they're manually going to Windows Update. They won't see it sitting there in WSUS. This is something that has been done deliberately so that you as the partner and reseller system integrator can go through and pick and choose the time that it's appropriate for you to go through and update those machines. Now, what is important here is remembering that you do have that 1 year window in which you do need to get that machine updated if you do want to take advantage of the free upgrade offer that applies to certain editions of Windows. And this is something that we'll probably tackle in a bit more detail in an upcoming webcast. But again, remember though, we're not going to be focused that heavily on Windows 10 apart from the interactions with Windows Server. Now, one of the things that has been updated here is that there is a new connector for Windows Server Essentials 2012 R2, and what I strongly recommend here is going to the blog site that I've got listed here. So pause the video, write this down, or alternatively just go to blogs.technet.com/SBS and you'll be able to find it. And what's important here is to go through and take a look, because this is something that they have updated a couple of times around some different time frames for some different updates that are coming. And it's also important to take a look at the comments section there, because there's some good ideas there in terms of letting you know what people are seeing. So this is something that I'd suggest right now, that if you want to test it out in your own environment, if you want to upgrade your own machines to Windows 10 and you are connecting to Windows Server Essentials 2012 R2, take a look. But otherwise, if you take a look through here, you'll find that some of the earlier versions of products like Home Server and Essentials didn't actually need an updated connector. So there may be some people who get away with this without seeing any issues whatsoever, but really pay attention to what they've got listed here, as well as going through the comments and the feedback section, because there's a lot of really important information in there. So now another important thing is when it's time to add new versions of Windows Server to our environment. So here, whether we're talking about just a normal Windows environment, or if we're talking about an Essentials environment, we need to start becoming more aware of what some of those new group policy changes are that have been pushed out there. So in this case, two important updates or releases have been pushed out onto downloads.microsoft.com, and you'll find a link to these inside of the blog post that I've got up on blogs.technet.com/Oz OEM team. The link for this is at the end of the video. But we've got the ADMX files, or the Active Directory group policy files, so that you can actually go through and import these and start having those settings available so that you can apply them to Windows 10 based machines. But the other important part of this though is that the group policy spreadsheets are also available for Windows 10 files. So with these group policy spreadsheets, if you haven't seen them before, they really give you, a policy by policy breakdown of what's actually included in these different group policy settings and what's available. So obviously there are some changes in Windows 10. Some of them may be things that you want your customers to embrace immediately. Some of them may be things that you're not quite so sure about. So this gives you a chance to go through and start working with those to make sure that you can actually give your customers a good experience here. Now, the final thing that I've got listed here, and part of this was partly due to a response that I had to give to one of the people at Microsoft around, how do Microsoft partners go through and do evaluations of, Windows 10 without necessarily using up their internal usage rights? And I recommended that they go and take a look at the Eval Center up on TechNet. Now with the Eval Center, it's not just Windows 10, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's up there. And what's important here is that you've got the full Enterprise Evaluation Edition, which you can run for several months. You can test it out, you can see how integration works without worrying about activation, without worrying about what impact it has on your own licenses, for example, because I know that's something that we're all in a situation where we tend to build machines, tear them down, whether we're talking about physical machines or virtual machines, and the last thing we really want to do is start locking ourselves out of our own licenses. Now, a related piece to this, and another part of the conversation that I had to have with someone around this, was they were saying, but what if my customers only got Home or only got Pro, for example, editions of Windows 10? Should I be testing with Win 10 Enterprise? And this time around with Win 10 Enterprise, it really is additive to the other editions of Windows. So you don't need to have Windows Home Edition unless you are trying to specifically troubleshoot something related to Home that isn't in the other versions. But just for your general app compatibility testing, domain join type features, etc., just going straight to the Enterprise evaluation version is definitely not going to cause you any harm. So what else is happening on the Windows Server Essentials 2012 R2 front? So even though I haven't got it listed here on the slide, one of the things here is that the product team is slowly starting to talk a little bit more about the Essentials 2016 version. There are preview editions of this available depending on what version of an MSDN subscription you may have. And the current rumor mill is that we should be expecting a new Windows Server preview build at some point soon. We're still on Tech Preview 2, that's been out for a while, so hopefully we see a Tech Preview 3 coming up soon where Essentials is made more broadly available as a standalone product. But don't forget though that even with just the standard preview of Windows Server that's available now, you can enable that Essentials feature directly inside of the console. So just go into Server Manager and you can add this through the the roles and features capabilities, and you're good to go. So just the update that I've got listed here is one that's been out for a couple of months now, but I thought I'd draw people's attention to it. And it's something where you may have issues depending on how you've got things set up around trying to integrate your Office 365 environment or your Microsoft Online Services with Windows Server Essentials dashboard. So just go through this, take a look, read through the comments that are listed in here in the blog post, because you'll find that there may be some things that are applicable for you and some additional sources of information that may be useful. But otherwise, that download has been available for a short while now. So let's just switch gears a little bit now and talk about some of the bits of information that were announced or released or discussed at the Worldwide Partner Conference just last month. So first up, obviously Windows 10 was a very, very big part of a lot of the conversations there. So some of the things they were talking about was, not just personal computing, but, moving on now to, what they were dubbing more personal computing. So things that aren't just a computer that sits on the desktop, but something that's customized and heavily focused on working the way that you want it to. The other piece which was included in a lot of the conversations was around hybrid solutions. So the concept of hybrid solutions has sort of extended over time, but the important takeaway message here is just really reiterating that message about taking advantage of cloud technologies when and where they make sense for customers. So instead of being in a situation where you have to sort of go, well, this customer can't use cloud technologies because of this reason or that reason. Okay, that's not what the conversation is. It's a matter of picking and choosing the right workload. It's about picking and choosing the right time frame, and it's also about picking and choosing the right customer as well, because there are some customers that this is going to be a better conversation migration with until some of the others are ready to move across. So no real surprises on this front, because this has been the direction that Microsoft has been promoting for quite a while now. Other things that were raised were around the ongoing opportunities that there are in workload migration into virtual environments. So I guess in mid-sized organizations, in enterprise, virtualization is pretty much the way things have been done for a little while now. But in a lot of SMB environments, virtualization, it doesn't really have the reach that we see in enterprise customers. So what they're talking about here is really just going through and making sure that whether it's part of your existing migration project, so moving from one version of something to another, it may be a Server 2003 end of support conversation, just making sure that the virtualization is used appropriately to really start giving customers better solutions around about recovery, mobility, etc. Another announcement that was made was the introduction of the Office 365 E5 suite. Now, this is something that for a lot of smaller SMB customers may not be that applicable just yet, but this is really some of the big changes here is that it replaces the E4 plan, but it now starts including cloud-based telephony, so cloud-based PABX type functionality. Now, this is something that functionality won't be rolling out in Australia for a little while yet, but stay tuned. As soon as that information does become more readily available, we'll be the first to share it with you. Moving on, the other big item that really was an important part of a lot of the sessions that I attended to an overwhelming degree was around enterprise mobility. So taking advantage of some of Microsoft's cloud capabilities such as Azure Active Directory and Microsoft Intune for things like mobile device management for Windows 10, for information rights management, for doing security analysis of user logins, etc. across the web. And this was really an area that got a lot of attention through the keynotes, through a lot of the sessions. And one of the things that I normally tell people, if they're asking around, what are the key areas I should be focusing on from a Microsoft perspective, is if you watch the keynotes or if you go through the presentations that they had at the keynotes, generally they're the things that you need to pick a few of those things to focus on, even if they're not necessarily the things that are your bread and butter today. They're the kinds of things that moving forward you'll go, this is something that I really should be spending more time on. And these WPC keynotes really do give a good idea of that. Now, the final piece that I just want to talk about quickly around WPC 2015 content was around some of the Windows Server 2003 conversations that were there. So there was only one end of support session or one direct session on Windows Server 2003 end of support, primarily because this occurred during WPC. So telling you that something was about to support was about to go dead, or that support had gone had been extinguished the day beforehand, wouldn't have really made a lot of sense. But there were a few differences in the approach that they had with some of these sessions, and some of these were things that you probably started seeing some shift towards this over the conversations, and quite different conversations versus the XP end of support conversations. But some of the things here were around, raising the compliance risks with different regulatory bodies. So finance, so maybe, people in banking, etc., people who need to deal with banks, healthcare, and this is one that we've seen a few examples of this already starting to occur in Australia, as well as, retail environments needing to be more up to date. Another change in tact that they had this time round was, starting to introduce, the dates around the SQL 2005 end of support, and this is April 12, 2016. So we're talking about something that is roughly, I guess 8 months or so away from when we're recording this. So this is another one of those things that if you've got customers who are still on 2003 and are saying, well, everything is still working, well, if they're running SQL 2005, they probably really need to start planning that now. And this one ties in really well with the final bullet point around collaboration is key with difficult or unfamiliar scenarios. Because if they're still running Server 2003 and SQL 2005 because of a line of business application that they've got, and that's something that you may not necessarily have the right skills or experience to really approach a migration of that. One of the big things that came out of one of the sessions was just making sure that you are collaborating with the right people here. So there may be someone in your area who focuses extensively on databases, migration, etc., and application details, whereas you may be more focused on the ongoing infrastructure and maintenance. So make sure that you can partner up with some of the appropriate people to make your life a little bit easier here. there, rather than avoiding projects or taking on projects that may be, really outside of your comfort zone. So what are some of the events that are coming up that you probably should be made aware of? Well, first up, a couple of online events. So first up with these two online events, they're both at the Microsoft Virtual Academy. Now the warning here is that the time zones don't necessarily translate well to Australian time zones, regardless of whether you're on the East Coast or the West Coast or the people in the middle of Australia. So that's all of you in Adelaide and those of you in Darwin, and I guess Alice Springs and a few other places, so I can't be exclusive. So what you'll see here is that these are coming in the coming weeks. Now the good thing with these is if you do miss them, you can go and download the content later on. So you don't need to get up at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning to watch these. If you just wait a week or two after the fact, if you have registered, you'll get notifications that the session recordings are available, and then you can watch them online, or you can also download them and watch them as many times as you want, or download them to your phone and watch them while you're going for a walk on a treadmill or riding a bike, a stationary bike, of course. Now the other thing that it's occurring here is the in-person. The only one we've really got on the calendar right now, but we're sort of waiting for some things to finalize so we can start announcing more dates for events, is the Ignite Australia event. So this will be held on the Gold Coast from November 17 onwards. Now what's important here is that this is the replacement event for what used to be TechEd. So the TechEd event globally has been rebranded as Ignite. Now that, as I mentioned, it's a 4-day event, so this isn't a free event where you can just turn up on the day and go to sessions. This is something where you do have to pay to attend, you have to go in advance, but we're looking at what representation from the OEM team that we can have at that event, so that if anyone who is in the OEM and System Builder channel and pays attention to our content, that that they've got a chance to come along, catch up with us, and maybe go through any specific items that you do need to go through. Now finally, when it comes to resources, the two main ones that I'll push you towards here are Smart HQ, and as it says here, this is really designed for resellers, Microsoft resellers, OEM resellers, hardware and device resellers, so that you can go and get information that relates to sales, marketing, links to technical information, and that's up at smarthq.com.au. Now the other one we've got here is the Microsoft Australia OEM team blog site. Now this is where I post a lot of content related to primarily Windows Server, but also some Windows 10 content, and this is really where a lot of the information that we'll be putting into these videos does come from. So it's the things that we've sort of found that we need to make sure people are aware of. So go up and take a look at it, leave feedback if you've got any comments, ideas, suggestions, things that you want us to see. Definitely let us know, and we'll get that information up there for you. Now the other thing, and I don't have it listed on the side, but I'll just mention it now. If you do need to contact us via email, if you send an email to oemserverau@microsoft.com, that will come through to me and a few other people, and we can generally get back to you quite quickly on that. Now just note that email address is for pre-sales information, licensing information, etc., related to OEM server products. So if you've got something that falls into those categories, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll get that information. We'll get responses out to you, or sort of let you know where to go as quickly as we possibly can. So with that, I'd like to thank you for joining us on the first of these recordings, and hopefully you'll be joining us again soon for upcoming live editions of these that we'll be performing.